Thanks for clicking on this video. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon and turn on all notifications to keep up to date with the latest information and discussions. Come on everyone, let's be real here. In Dragon Ball, it's always Krilla time. Hey guys, MasakoX here. With the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie really asserting its dominance in the box offices, especially in Japan, and really making it clear that it's going to take over the world, we need to focus on a particular character who, without a doubt, is making one of the biggest impacts in anime presently. He is the strongest member of his race. That's right. Today we talk about the strongest human. You thought I was going to be talking about Saiyans the livelong day. Well, nope. We're going to be talking about the good old humans. We're putting our attention back into Krillin because, let's be real here, he needs about as much kudos as he can get. And especially after what Toriyama did to him and pretty much every other human character. Oh god, what happened in the Tournament of Power manga must have stung. A couple of years back, in front of a Floridian swimming pool no less, I did a video concerning about whether Krillin was the best fighter in the Z Squad. And I suppose that, yes indeed he was. Not by pure strength as many would like to judge him by, but mainly about his purely really driven attitude. I mostly chatted about what the ramifications were for Krillin's place in the story, and how he was such a positive influence. The original Dragon Ball was in danger of falling into the shounen chasm which was in its infancy, or failing to make an impact like Toriyama's other works like Tongpu and Dragon Boy. Granted, they were basically facsimiles and prototypes of the Dragon Ball formula, but they didn't really stick around for long, they were basically one-shots. But nonetheless, Dragon Ball was the one that really stuck, and really, Krillin has to be one of the factors that we've got to thank for that being a thing, and why we have a show to really love, and why I have a YouTube career. Now, if you didn't see that video, and I don't blame you because it was 2 years ago, and a certain place likes to bury certain content eventually, not naming names, let me remind you of the reason why Krillin was introduced into Dragon Ball from the creator himself. Back in Daizenshuu 2, effectively one of the scriptures of Dragon Ball from the early 90s, Toriyama addresses Kazuhika Torishima, one of his first editors on Dragon Ball, as being one of the driving influences into changing up the Dragon Ball story at around about the episode 13 mark, or one of the early chapters. He was one of the big influences about bringing in the Tenkaichi Budokai, as well as other things that were driven into the series. Up until the Tenkaichi Budokai began, the series hadn't been all that popular. That's what Torishima-san had told me. "Your protagonist is rather plain, that's why it's not popular," he said. Personally, since I was doing a fighting story for this series, I had intentionally made the protagonist's clothing excessively plain. So this annoyed me, but then I figured it out. Well, let's increase its popularity, I thought. When I had designed Goku's character, the words that best represented him were, "I want to become strong." So I thought I'd bring that to the front. So I'd simply make the story into a tournament format. From there, the Tenkaichi Budokai was born. I temporarily withdrew the other characters besides Goku, brought back Kami-Sennin, and added Kuririn as a new character. From there, it got popular before I knew it. So what Toriyama means by that is that he withdrew Bulma and Yamcha and Oolong and all the characters that had been introduced, and just brought it back to basics with just Goku, Master Roshi, and now Krillin as a rival. And in my other video, I really brought down the fact that Krillin wasn't the same person that we really know him for. He was a jealous little twerp as a kid. He just wanted to beat Goku out of sheer jealousy. But over the time that he spent with Master Roshi and Goku, he quickly really understood the purity and the endearing nature of Goku, and thusly became one of his strongest allies. Goku was pure and had a genuine nature, he was honest, and that really blew Krillin's mind. And yes, you could also interpret that as being rather bland and generic and really not having much drive other than becoming strong, which could have been the series' downfall if it wasn't too careful. But let's just think about why Krillin decided to leave the monks that he used to train with. He wasn't the model pupil, so he wanted to try something different, but it didn't turn out all that great initially. There was a good reason why Krillin wasn't destined to be a monk, because he was a rather disrespectful pupil. He was very self-centered and didn't really care for Master Roshi's unorthodox training regime of running around with crates of milk up and down a mountain and a hill. You know, it just seemed a bit inane as far as he was concerned. Master Roshi's training regime was rather different, but it was rather effective because Goku took to it like a duck to water, and for good reason, because Grandpa Gohan and Master Roshi were like that pretty much the ways that Grandpa Gohan would train Goku were not all that different from what Roshi's doing, so therefore Goku is basically the same. Abstract training came naturally to Goku, whereas Krillin, who had been used to sticking to basic, pure martial arts, found the whole thing rather confusing and pointless. In fact, the jealousy that he had towards Goku and the fact that he was taking to this so well made him actually hate Goku initially, something that he admitted to Goku years later. Luckily for the series' benefit, Krillin's mood and actual outlook on life changed dramatically as it went on, and thank goodness for that. I can imagine that the constant wish of trying to best Goku despite being quite clearly bested by him, as we would then find out because of the whole Saiyan origin and whatnot, would have gotten old pretty fast and really turned off many audiences. It was necessary to have a rival at that point, but it was good to just have it as a mini arc and for Krillin to then evolve rather quickly. It was basically the driving force before the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai. We needed something to get to that point and to get Goku training as a martial artist, as it were, and Krillin and Roshi's regime and the arc there was perfect. It was there not just to show Krillin's character evolution, but to also show that Goku wasn't a bland main character, and that Roshi's instructions and outlook on life weren't all that strange, and that he could be an effective master. Despite Krillin becoming a better person, he still held on to some of his bad traits, but mostly for comic relief rather than just pure spite. Because that was clearly the role that he was fulfilling at the time. He was the comic relief. However, Toriyama decided to actually give Krillin something else, because having a comic relief character would have, again, gotten old rather fast. But Toriyama gave us eventually a reason to really like Krillin and to empathize with him, make him endearing, kinda like Goku. It was basically because he was bullied at the Orin Temple from which he came from, and understandably because he was short, he must have not been as good as them, but, you know, he sure showed them eventually. But, yeah, Krillin was just a tragic soul who never really saw kindness at his time at the temple. Before he met Roshi and Goku and the others, Krillin had never really understood kindness and was really a maltreated character. He wasn't really used to kindness, and that's something that many other subsequent protagonists would have experienced in their transition from a baddie to a goodie. In fact, if you want to interpret it another way, you could think of Krillin as a prototype for Toriyama for the model that would be used time and time and time again throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball. A bad guy who had a tragic background, who would then fight against Goku, then be shown mercy by Goku as well as kindness, not understand it, but eventually take to it like a duck to water. All of the redemption arcs we got came from Krillin. Who'd have thunk it? Wow, Krillin really set the bar for many Dragon Ball tropes, didn't he? I love this notion. Krillin wasn't just trained in the form of martial arts as well as discipline, but also begun to understand what it was like to be a person, develop social skills, develop empathy, something that he never got whilst he was at the temple, but now actually being around normal people, or as normal as could be expected for Dragon Ball, could become a much more rounded person. It worked wonders for him, and he eventually became a very kind and trusting ally. You could depend on Krillin. But despite him becoming much more amiable over time, Krillin is often seen as the crafty, cunning one, coming up with plans that not many people would expect. And much more recently, trying to take on Universe 4's Majora with that shoe tactic. And if anyone remembers the Tournament of Power, that shoe moment, brilliant. Now, two of the most defining moments for Krillin came at the 22nd Martial Arts Tournament, with a semi-final match against Goku, as well as, well, his untimely demise, which is unfortunate, passing at the hands of Tambourine. And as you know, that wouldn't be the last time that Krillin's demise would have an impact on the show, and particularly an impact on Goku. Later on, after his first revival, Krillin has reformed even further, and he becomes much more like the person that we know him today. His journey into becoming the character that we see for the rest of the franchise is effectively complete, and from then on it could adjust itself in bits and pieces, slowly evolving but basically becoming the same model. You remember that character icon thing that Haveron and I keep on talking about, and it still really applies? Yeah, it's showing its head a little bit here. In Z, Krillin's role changes quite considerably, going from Goku's sidekick to becoming effectively an older brother figure for Gohan, Goku's son. Why did this happen exactly? Well, at the point in Z when we find out about Goku's Saiyan origins, he didn't really need a sidekick anymore. It all began at the beginning of Z and still runs to this day. Goku mostly trains by himself. he trained on King Kai's planet by himself, he trained in 100 times Earth gravity by himself. It all began at Z. He didn't train with other people, like with the old days of Krillin and Roshi. No. He was eventually becoming an independent warrior who loved one-on-one matches. So therefore, Krillin's place as his sidekick and companion and buddy was really superfluous to requirements. Toriyama decided to change Krillin's role instead of pushing him into the background, like Toriyama often likes to do. TT! Piccolo may have been a paternal role model for Gohan, but in terms of actually spending time together, Krillin and Gohan spent a lot of time together. He quickly became a caring friend for the young half-Saiyan hybrid, and really, despite the age gap, it felt like there really wasn't one. It felt like they were two kids again. It kept Krillin feeling young. And that moment when Krillin and Gohan acted together to save Dende's life, that was a really powerful moment. Also, he was able to wield the Spirit Bomb against Vegeta. Yeah, he didn't generate the Spirit Bomb, but Goku trusted him enough, and it was a nice little callback to the original Dragon Ball that, take the Spirit Bomb, I trust you with it, go and stop Jeets. Now the thing that many people tend to forget is that despite the many times that Krillin has bitten the dust, he didn't pass due to cowardice or anything like that. Far from it. And nor was it down to him being unwilling to help his friends no matter what the situation. You begin to realize that the punches that Krillin rolls with come from the fact that he's trying to help someone else. And while he is often out of his league when it comes to direct comparisons of power and strength, he isn't afraid to stand up and at least try, especially against Cell. He's also a very vital character to that time in the arc because he was the first person there to see the androids not as monsters. His reformed nature from when he was a kid as an effective delinquent but only just happened to be at a temple made him relate to 17 and 18 in a way. All that he needed and what they needed was some compassion, clarity, and time. Wow, now that I think about it, the whole trusting feeling towards Android 18 makes even more sense. It wasn't just a random crush. What Krillin did was powerful. He saw himself in 17 and 18. A confused child who hadn't really been shown kindness or had any kind of stability in their lives up to that point, and instead decided to rebel against all the people that doubted them or never had any faith in him. He gave them a chance, and this action was one of the most important moments in Dragon Ball history. Without him willing to give the androids a chance, the Tournament of Power could have ended rather differently. Then there is his actual relationship with Android 18, which is quite clearly one of the healthiest relationships in Dragon Ball. Even if sometimes 18 has to push him to his limits, and I mean really push him, it's all done in order to give Krillin back the confidence that he was really lacking in Super, especially at the beginning of it. Thanks to all of the archives from Dragon Ball Online, which many people consider to be quite legitimate because Toriyama really effectively penned the history and the effective future of Dragon Ball in that game, Krillin ends up being the one to reform the Turtle School. Something that should be very familiar to anyone who is a very big fan of the Dragon Ball multiverse manga. In many respects, Krillin is the character with the biggest development plot in the series. And even Super, who tends to be rather conservative with their character development, gave Krillin a chance to do something quite useful. In many regards, Krillin fills the role of a protagonist much more so than Goku does, and I feel like his future is rather bright. It's kind of like the situation from The Lord of the Rings, where Frodo has effectively become the everyman, and like Goku in doing so, he just becomes a bland and faceless model of a character. And because of that, the far less heroic Samwise becomes up becoming the champion of the story, and that's what Krillin's become. For sure, we can say that Krillin won't actually fight all that often, but despite that, Krillin's place in the story is guaranteed. I feel like his closure will end up feeling pretty satisfying, which is more than we can say for many other characters in Dragon Ball. So what do you guys think? Do you feel like Krillin deserves closure, or do you feel like he should be rebooted from the ground up? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!